Welcome back to Unlocking the Paranormal. I'm your host, Carrie. And if this is your first time checking out the show, I do appreciate you giving it a listen. If you're a return listener, I do appreciate you coming back each week to support the show. If this is your first time, you are dropping into the middle of the spooky summer series where I have been collecting travel stories from honestly all over, where I share people's paranormal encounters while they were on vacations or traveling for work. They may have been staying at hotels, Airbnbs, cabins, or even camping out in the woods, and also happen to have a weird paranormal encounter. The idea behind the Spooky Summer series is that vacations, road trips, outdoor adventures, they're supposed to create lasting memories. And most of the time, those memories come from the breathtaking scenery, unexpected discoveries, and time spent with your family and friends. But every now and then, people return home remembering something else entirely. So, in today's spooky summer series episode, I'll be exploring 3 eerie travel stories from people who encountered something they still can't explain. We have a story that involves a haunted boarding house in Bar Harbor, Maine, a bizarre sighting in one of the most remote regions of the American West, and a terrifying night spent in a camper van near a forest with a reputation for ghostly activity. So settle in because sometimes the most unsettling stories don't happen at home. They happen when you're far from it. One Reddit user recalled a strange experience that took place during a family vacation to Bar Harbor, Maine in the summer of 1963. After arriving late in the evening, the family discovered that the hotel they had planned to stay at was completely booked. The desk clerk explained that this happened frequently during the busy season and suggested a nearby boarding house that often accommodated overflow guests. The family made their way to the boarding house, which was run by what the storyteller remembered as a sweet older woman. As was customary for the family, the parents rented one room while the two brothers, ages 15 and 10, shared another. At first, everything seemed normal, but after settling in for the night, the brothers began hearing loud banging noises and heavy footsteps coming from the floor above them. The sounds continued for so long that the younger brother became frightened. Eventually, the two boys left their room altogether and ran next door to their parents' room and desperately asked to be let in. The parents had heard the noises too. Unfortunately, it was late, and finding another place to stay wasn't really an option, so the sleeping arrangements changed. The younger brothers stayed with their mother, while the father and the older son spent the rest of the night in the boys' room. The noises continued well into the night. By morning, everyone was exhausted. The family decided to cut their stay short and check out a day early. Before leaving, the father mentioned the disturbance to the owner, explaining that they had barely slept because of the constant banging and footsteps overhead. The response that he received, honestly, it caught everyone off guard. The owner calmly replied that Harold had been very active the night before. Confused, the family asked who Harold was. The woman explained that Harold had been the original owner of the house. According to her, even though he had died years earlier, he never truly left. She went on to say that the activity tended to increase whenever children were staying in the house. Suddenly, the unexplained footsteps and banging from the empty floor above seemed a little more unsettling. Whether the family had spent the night listening to an unusually noisy old house, or if it truly was haunted, the experience remained memorable enough that decades later, this storyteller still recalled the name of the man they were told was responsible. And that is Harold. It's really hard to say because I don't even know of this place. I don't know what else to say other than I have to believe the story, right? I have to believe what this Reddit user explained in their story. Now, obviously, could there have been somebody that snuck into the room upstairs and was being noisy? Maybe. You never really know. You never really know with these stories. You just kind of have to learn to trust that whoever is sharing the story, whether it's on Reddit or with you personally, is being honest and not full of shit. Let me know what you guys think of that story. So, for this next story that I will get into, it's actually an experience that I have yet to cover in the Spooky Summer series with the type of paranormal activity that is occurring. Now, this was shared by a Reddit user that goes by the username Brancher, and it was shared about 2 years ago. And this is what they had to say. I had an unexplainable incident happen to me while hunting several years back. This is certainly not your typical hunting story. I was new to the area and drew my first antelope tag in an area known as the Red Desert, and I specifically scouted a remote location known as Bison Basin to hunt in. The area is probably one of the most remote areas in the lower 48 and a great area for antelope hunting. But all that is really out there is some oil and gas production and uranium mining ops. Long story short, I shot an antelope about 150 yards away from me and 200 yards from my truck. I walked out to where it dropped and filled out and attached my tag. That's when I looked up and noticed off in the distance, on the horizon, a bright light moving quickly. But it was hard to gauge the speed because it was probably a good 10 miles off in the distance. You can see for miles in all directions out there. One thing to note is that the time and distance intervals are important to this story. With antelope meat, it is important to get the animal cooled off as quickly as possible, or else the meat can taste kind of funky. So I was in a rush to get the animal and get back to my truck so I could pack the body cavity with ice. That being said, I tagged the buck, looked up and saw the light on the horizon, thinking nothing of it, and I quickly went to work field dressing. In a matter of 30 to 45 seconds, I had opened up the body cavity and removed the guts, and that is when I glanced up and noticed about a mile away or less that the light that I had seen in the distance was approaching me with incredible speed. So in that 30 to 45 seconds, that light had covered a distance of what I estimate to have been 9 miles, and it was approaching me at this speed. I couldn't tell what I was looking at, as the light was very bright and flying over the top of the sagebrush and making no sound. As the light got within 200 yards of me, after observing it for a few seconds, I could make out what it was. It was a rectangular shape of polished metal, about 5 feet tall by 2 to 3 feet wide, like a dressing mirror, and it was reflecting the setting sun which was behind me, back at me. The flying object then dropped down below the sage, and I couldn't see it anymore. Again, it made no sound, but it was close enough to me I should have heard an engine noise. I was spooked and shook. I wanted to get back to my truck and leave, but I had to take the animal. I bent over and hid below the sagebrush line and quickly finished field dressing and grabbed the leg and took off, running/dragging the antelope back towards my truck. This all took a matter of 1 minute to 1.5 minutes before I was completely gassed. So I stopped and looked back to see if the light was anywhere to be seen. And I could now see the light blasting off in the opposite direction. Again, back 8 or 9 miles going towards the horizon, moving faster than anything could possibly travel over that terrain. It was still reflecting the setting sun back at me. It eventually disappeared over the horizon after a couple of seconds, and I finished dragging the animal to the truck and got the fuck out. I don't know what I saw, but I know it was not a drone or any kind of low-flying plane. I would have heard engine noises, and that terrain could not be covered at that speed by any kind of wheeled vehicle. I even went as far as to ask Fish and Game and the uranium miners if they ever operated any kind of drone that could perform like that, and they said no. But I know it wasn't a drone. I have never been back to that area since. There you have it. That is like the first UFO sighting in the Spooky Summer series. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised I haven't found more of these stories. So, with this story, he is describing a rectangular shaped UFO, which honestly is not the first time that I've heard of a rectangular shaped UFO. I've heard of a cigar shaped UFO. It's really kind of interesting, though, that he describes it reflecting the sun. It was just that reflective and shiny that honestly, when I found this story and I first started reading it and it was somebody's hunting trip, I assumed that this was going to be a Bigfoot or cryptid sighting, but it wasn't. Honestly, I was pleasantly surprised. Absolutely love these UFO encounter stories. If any of you have had your own UFO, weird light, object in the sky sighting, please send those my way. You can email it to unlockingtheparanormalpod@gmail.com, or you can call the hotline and leave a voicemail. You have, I think, about 3 minutes to share your story, but if that is not enough time, you can call back and leave a second voicemail. Now, you can remain completely anonymous with either calling and or emailing me. Just simply request that when you send over your story. And obviously, if you don't care if I share your name, then feel free to provide it and I will happily share your name. Okay, so these episodes are meant to be mini episodes, but I do actually have one additional story, and this was shared by an Anthony and Marielle. And the title of the story is When a Night in the Camper Van Turns Eerie. This is what they shared. Here is one of our wildest short adventure stories. We go on a lot of adventures with our camper van, and most of the time, we'll park in places in the middle of nowhere. Usually, our nights are peaceful, cozy, and all fine. However, one night, in a little village in North France, just off the city of Nancy, we found a place near the start of a forest trail to sleep for the night. We were half asleep when we heard thumping sounds outside, like there was somebody knocking. We thought maybe it was a robber, but we took a look through our window and there was no one in sight. At that point, we were a little scared, but we brushed it off, thinking maybe it was just the wind, howling, or our camper van. After all, it is not the first time we've heard bizarre sounds outside while sleeping in random places in the wilderness. We decided to go back to sleep, but the pounding sounds started again. Completely freaked out at this point, we chose to just leave and head to the security service parking nearby. The next morning, as we were buying bread in town for breakfast, we told the story to the baker and he told us there have been many creepy stories of spirits making themselves feel known in the forest. He suspected it was related to the previous hiking accidents, where hikers got lost or fell from the trail, only to be found weeks later. Hearing that, we were a bit relieved that we left and nothing else happened. One thing is for sure, we will never return to that spot again after the experience, nor will we be hiking through those forest trails. All right, and there you have it. You have spirits haunting a forest and making themselves known. I absolutely love haunted forest stories. I don't see why a forest couldn't be as haunted as a house, as anywhere else that you travel to and stay indoors. So I'm I really just am surprised we don't hear more, especially when homes get torn down, buildings get torn down, places where homes or businesses once stood are now empty. If a place is haunted and you tear it down, it's weird to think that all of a sudden that's going to be the magic answer and that location is just all of a sudden no longer haunted. That just seems a little weird to me. But then again, if there's nothing there for the spirits to cling on to, then maybe they go elsewhere. Maybe their energy moves on, goes somewhere else, who knows where, and we will never really know. If you have your own creepy forest stories where you encountered a spirit in an actual forest or outdoors, I would love to hear those stories. Again, my email is unlockingtheparanormalpod@gmail.com, or you can call the hotline, or if you prefer to just DM me on social media, that is perfectly fine. I am on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Do be sure that you follow along as well. I do share additional creepy content from time to time. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the podcast so you never miss a new episode. Starting this fall will be the longer episodes where I deep dive into paranormal topics. Season 3 will actually premiere in September because to me, September is the beginning of the official or the OG spooky season. My birthday is in September. My birthday usually lands on the first day of fall, which is probably why I absolutely love the fall season. We'll actually be kicking off season 3 by sharing my personal paranormal encounters. I somehow have yet to do that on this podcast, which is a little weird that I haven't shared my own. All right, that is it for today's episode. I do appreciate you checking out the show today. Until next time, stay curious.